How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to Sabres Chat, presented by Built in Buffalo. I am your host, Luka. Appreciate you stopping back for episode 9. Now we are on here. And before I get to the lead and the thumbnail, and honestly, the subject of what any Sabres fan wants to hear about, constantly think about, and that is Devon Levi, of course, I need to kind of give my update and take and feel on how everything has gone with the team overall since I was with you last week on Thursday or whenever you chose to stop by and listen slash watch and or watch. Um, so I mean, look, everyone who watches the Sabres follows, of course, understands what has happened since last week when I was recording. And that is simply put that the team of which seemed dead about 3 weeks ago now. And I declared it that way, I believe 3 episodes. Well, yeah, this would be 3 episodes ago, 2 episodes ago, depending on how you look at it. And then they found themselves alive again due to results around the league and their play themselves, kind of refiguring out who they were, or, reminding themselves who they were, getting back on track. And Pittsburgh wasn't pulling away, and Florida really wasn't going anywhere, and so on and so forth. And all of a sudden, they were alive again. What is dead may never die. If you get that reference, good on you. And they found themselves alive again going into that Rangers game Friday night, this past Friday night. And lo and behold, Devon Levi gets the nod. And of course, I will go into depth with all of that later here. That is what I want to preface or kind of have the main subject of this episode about, because it's by far the most interesting thing with the Sabres team at this point in time. They go into that Rangers game and they pull out a win. And Devon Levi looks really good. And again, I'll get into that more later. And they then the following night go into Philly. The Rangers game was at home. Next day, go into Philly, a team who they have struggled against all season up until that point, and took care of business. And it started to maybe get out of hand just a touch there early in the third. It became a 1-goal game there, 4-3, but then they kind of, you know, buckled up, kind of got to business, got a couple goals there, walk out with a 6-3 win. And the stage was set for that Tuesday night game in Fort Lauderdale against the Panthers. And it was clearly, by a lot, the game of the decade. And first and foremost, I just want to say that game lived up to kind of the feeling and potential and I don't want to call it hype, but it really was hype, I guess. The hype that everyone built it into. And the Panthers, clearly based on their play and some of the, if you haven't seen it out there, big social media out of TSN, which is a Canadian massive sports media group, their social media group Bar Down posted a video, and I'm sure they pulled it from someone else. Matt Tkachuk on the bench during the final seconds of that game where they eventually won was jumping up and down, and he was hyping. They clearly understood the severity of that game, of course, but the Sabres obviously as well understood it, and the fans and everything like that. We all knew what was going on. It was that day, Tuesday, for myself at least, and I'm sure a lot of others follow this, moved by very slow, and everyone was just anticipating 7:00 for puck drop to watch that game. And it was a playoff game. It really was. From start to finish, the physicality, the high speed nature of it. I feel like the refs in the first period kind of didn't get the message, and they were calling some penalties that really, you couldn't say that they were absolutely ridiculous, other than the Jost interference one, of course, at the blue line. That was just ridiculous. But beyond that, like the Jost penalty where it was a procedure thing right after our goal, our power play goal, Jost swats the puck back. You got to make that call. Like the ref has to make that call. It's blatant. It's obvious. You got to make that call. But it's like they didn't get the memo to kind of let things go here, because both teams understand how big and the magnitude of this game, and they are playing to it and they are letting it. You need to let that game develop and have a momentum of some kind. And it didn't really get any sort of flow until late into the first period, where play was finally opened up a little bit and allowed to go back and forth and not just whistle every 2 minutes, if not less. And so it started a little bit clunky, we'll call it, but the physicality was there, mainly from Florida. Florida played out of their character and just very, very physical. Um, and I think some out there, there was one or two people, there's one that comes to mind specifically, but I don't want to call anyone out, obviously, and stuff. And you are absolutely entitled to feel how you are, and I respect it. I respect that much so. But there was an individual who replied to me, I said they were playing character. It was odd a little bit to watch Florida, because if you watch them all season, this isn't really how they played. But I'm assuming my mind goes to, this is how they want to play in the playoffs. They hear how teams feel they are a little bit of soft, kind of similar to how teams feel about the Sabres. And they wanted to kind of step up and make sure they asserted their dominance when it comes to the physical nature of that game. And I can respect that. But there was an individual who reached out to me when I even made a tweet about that and said I could call it what it was. It was cheap. They're being dirty, things like that. That is not being cheap or dirty. And I know it might feel like it was kind of on that line, but that's really, when you think about it, when you watch playoff hockey, playoff like games and things like that, where just the result is elevated and there's just so much more on the line, that is what you get. And that's what you should expect, that kind of play from teams in the playoffs and in games with playoff implications as big as what that game had. So, I mean, it's not dirty. It's just, that is what happens in a playoff like game. And it may have been just so long since we've seen the Sabres in a game like that, that it felt dirty and things like, and you just forget that that's really what the play style is like. There was not really ever that intent to injure and stuff like that. And we can, you can talk about Darlene getting hurt late with a little bit of a dirty hit / cross check and stuff. But, that was that game. This is a different game. And this was just more Florida elevating the physicality, elevating their dominance on their own home ice, and making sure the Sabres earned every inch of ice that they tried to get. So it was a great, great game. It wasn't the result we wanted, and it was a tough night's sleep. I'll be open and honest. It was tough. It was tough to kind of swallow that loss. It was tough to deal with the reality that, unfortunately, the playoff hopes are, I'm going to say almost, but they realistically are dead. If you're curious, because the Sabres do still have games in hand on the Panthers and Penguins, the reason that it really is dead is when you look at, for instance, the last 4 games that the Panthers have. They're at home Thursday against Ottawa. They are at Washington Saturday. They are home on Monday the 10th against Toronto, and then finish at home against Carolina. Now, Toronto and Carolina is nothing to sneeze at, but Carolina, maybe they'll play a little bit off because they're going to try to rest maybe it's a backup goalie situation, give their goalie a little bit of a night off before playoffs, things like that. Toronto might get, they might get their best effort there, but Ottawa and Washington realistically are 2 games that the Panthers should be able to win. That would then put them, and I apologize, I don't have the standings up per se, but that would put them out of reach, I believe, of the Sabres. Essentially, they would then, I believe, have, if I'm thinking about this correctly, I apologize again. They would then have 91 points. Okay. So that'd be 10 points out from the Sabres. And the Sabres, again, only have 6 games remaining. So essentially, they need to win out. So Panthers going 500, that gets them to 91 points. And that's best case scenario. I mean, realistically, the Panthers should absolutely win those games, right? Like against the Senators and Capitals, I mean. So, with that in mind, then you have the Penguins, who have at home Thursday against the Wild, Saturday at Detroit, then they're home against Chicago and at Columbus on Thursday. Minnesota's a tough one, but Detroit, Chicago, Columbus, for a veteran team understanding what is in front of them in the Pittsburgh Penguins with Malkin and Crosby and all that kind of stuff. Let's be real. Let's be honest with ourselves. The Penguins, they have been down, but they should at worst go 2-2 in that stretch. And in all reality, they should go 3-1. If they get 3, that's 6. That puts them at 92 points. Okay. 92 points. jumps over Florida in that situation, and that's assuming Florida goes 500, and that then puts them at 92 points, where the Sabres need all 12 in reality, all 12 points remaining on the schedule. So Sabres aren't mathematically out of it, but when you still have, and you have games this coming Monday at New York, you are then Tuesday at New Jersey. You have the home matinee game this coming Saturday against the Hurricanes, a team the Sabres have looked awful all the one or two times they've played them. It's it's very, very unlikely, but it's been awesome. And the last thing I want to touch on that game in Florida and why I loved it overall. And after I had that tough night's sleep and woke up and I felt refreshed, because it was just so nice to have that feeling watching a Sabres game again. It was so amazing having that anxiety, the good kind, the one that your fandom and everything that comes with being a fan of a sports team and things in very intense, high end games. All of that anxiety built up in me, and I wanted every second, and the game went slow for me, honestly, because I was paying attention so intensely at every second, no matter what was going on, no matter where the game was at that point in time. And it felt amazing. And even at moments, it kind of drew back to feelings I had from my childhood, because that was essentially the last time I myself got to feel this style feeling watching this Sabres team specifically. And it was awesome. It was awesome to feel that once again. And, I'll get into it in the end, but hopefully this team can build on that. But in that game, and what I want to discuss this episode, of course, if you've seen the thumbnail, if you've seen my tweets out about this, and if you came in through that, welcome again. But the lead of this episode and everything I want to talk about is the thing that every Sabres fan wants to talk about. And that is Master Levi, the one and only Devon Levi. And this kid is everything that the hype has been, spoken to us for years now, it feels like. And he has been incredible early on in his NHL career. And honestly, to me, has played above the expectation I would have for him, even though he was incredible in college and everything in 2020 World Juniors, where he really blew up. And also, by the way, is where that TV timeout ritual is kind of started and stems from, the meditation from it, and then everything like that. And also pulling from childhood memory of his out of Star Wars Episode 1, when Qui-Gon Jinn was doing a similar thing during his battle with Darth Maul. Hopefully he understands that Qui-Gon Jinn lost that fight pretty bad. But regardless, it's still an awesome thing. It's weird, but awesome. I don't want to talk about that too much. I think it's really cool and different, and goalies are allowed to be different, but he has been everything that the hype has been spoken to us for all these years, and so he's been incredible. And going back to it now, I talked about obviously the Rangers game to open up this episode, but going back to that being his first career start, it's unbelievable to think Don Granato, Kevin Adams, I'm sure had some word in this as well, and everyone involved that would make the decision on who's starting in net decided to throw this kid his first ever career start in the big show in the NHL with a game of that magnitude at home in front of the fans, which there's two sides to that to me, honestly. On one hand, you're giving the fans what they want. You want to show them this kid. Finally, he's in the house, he's in the arena, and you want to show them what you're trying to build here in this cornerstone piece that is your hopefully franchise goaltender. You want to show him off first and foremost to your fans. I love that. But man, with how big of a game that was, the potential of something going wrong in front of your fans and maybe it not living up, the disappointment that could have potentially come from that. And luckily it didn't, but could have come from that. That is a very high risk, high reward situation to me. I love it. It's a bit of a gamble, but at the same time, very high risk, high reward. And only letting in 2 goals, really coming up big in moments, it all throughout that game. He was unbelievably impressive to me. Like it was just, and everyone, everyone out there, he is already just building this kind of bigger than life aura about him. and it started from that first game against the Rangers. There's that the the interesting part was you could tell fans were craving it so much, and I was part of it, of course, but in the arena, I was not able to make it there, unfortunately, but even on the broadcast, you could tell fans were standing up going crazy. There was the save in the first period that the puck honestly should have been a goal for the Rangers. And the right-handed shooter, who I can't think of right now, kind of whiffs at the puck, isn't able to put it in the open net. Devon Levi is sliding to his right. So if you're looking at the net to the left, he's honestly on the left post, and the puck just luckily slides underneath him to then freeze the puck. He got lucky there, but that's everything you need, and it doesn't take away from his overall performance by any stretch of the imagination. And when the crowd erupted during that one, thinking it was an incredible save, I can understand in person, especially if you're not sitting on that end or close to that play there specifically, you might think in the moment that looked incredible. And look, you're just so starved for great goaltending, because the bottom line is you haven't gotten that this year, even with as how good the team in front of it has played at times. The goaltending hasn't been there, even when they're going on winning streaks and everything like that. The Florida road trip where they won both games, the overtime winner in Tampa, and then the 3-1 win in Florida. The 3-1 win, you got good goaltending out of Craig Anderson, but the goaltending in Tampa and then games around those games, you're allowing 3+ goals. Like, it was not goaltending that won you, it was offensive play, luckily. So now we have this, and you're just excited for any save possible because it's like, this guy could be it. This guy could be it. To me, when you finally could really open your eyes and be like, this guy really could be it, it's clearly that third period. It wasn't necessarily, he makes a big save in the second period. I can't remember the exact situation and stuff. I know there was a highlight reel one though, post to post in the second period. That first period save was a little bit lucky, of course, like I said, but in the third period, he allows a goal almost halfway through the period that ties up the game 2-2. Almost immediately after that, the team takes a penalty. And the Rangers, who are a very good power play and are buzzing right now. The Rangers are, at this point in time, this past Friday, the Rangers are just an absolute juggernaut of a team and are burying other teams right at that point in time. So you just allowed a tying goal. You go on the penalty kill. And Devon Levi makes, I believe it was 3 saves that were big during that penalty kill period, that 2-minute window. And on the whole, during that third period, he makes 19 saves on 20 shots, gets this team to overtime, and does his job. And Skinner puts away that beautiful goal to win it in overtime. And that third period was when I was like, okay, Devon Levi isn't just a high-end prospect. He might be big time. He might be legit. The hype might have been undersold, but at the same time, this is one game. It's at home. Sabres did a great job to keep him comfortable. I will say that too. I think the Rangers played really well, but I think the Sabres, for the most part, that third period, they got a little bit loose there. There's you don't allow 20 shots by playing a really good game, but I think overall, through the 60+ minutes, Sabres did a good enough job, especially for who they are as a team and allowing a lot of high scoring opportunities for the opposition as it is throughout the entire season. The Sabres did a good job to keep them as comfortable as they possibly could. But all of that in mind, Sabres win the game. And the cherry on top for me was also the post game interviews he gave. And he wasn't just giving your cliches. He wasn't just your regular quote unquote usual hockey guy with those cliches. He gave honest answers, real answers, answers that showed he understood the size of the moment. He understood the personal moment that he was going through and how he loved it. And he was up to the challenge and he wanted to be the guy, and he appreciated getting the call when it came to this game and starting this game, and hopefully being the guy who can get us a win with how big that game was. Unreal. I love the interview. Cherry on top for just an overall very, 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 an extremely impressive NHL debut for Devon Levi. And it was no surprise then to me after that game that he got the nod for the Panthers game this past Tuesday night. No surprise whatsoever. he was clearly going to be the guy. He should be the guy. And Granato got that right. And he showed in that game that he deserved to be that guy. And yes, it was a loss, but he only allowed 2 goals. That game was not was far from his fault for any reason that the loss occurred. And honestly, he was a big reason that they were in it all the way through to the final seconds when, Dahlin whiffs on that 1T and things like that. And it just they couldn't find that second goal, unfortunately. Um, Devon Levi was far from any fault in that game. He has that incredible highlight save yet again in the second period, flashing post to post to get a cross and make a save on a shot by Barkov. Unbelievable start. And honestly, I saw that save and it's on the road. And again, in a game where both teams understand how big it is. And this is essentially a playoff game before the playoffs, right? That is what that game was. And in that moment, he is exactly who he is. And I just couldn't believe what I was seeing, and that this was a kid's or a guy. I don't want to even say kid. This is a guy's second career NHL start, and it just seems like he's as comfortable as any other starting goaltender in this league. It was unbelievable, that save, and just the entire game through the final seconds of that game. The backbreaking goal happens a minute into the third period, and it was off a very unfortunate Tage Thompson turnover. Like, Tage, man, you can't do that. And Tage admits he can't make that kind of mistake. And, good on him for admitting to it and stuff. And Dahlin is upset that he whiffs on that 1T and stuff. But that backbreaking goal happens in the first minute of the third period, and it doesn't rattle Devon. Like, young goaltenders, I feel like, for an example I pull can get rattled in those moments. An example I pull from is UPL in the Boston game that we ended up losing 7-1. But it was a tight game. UPL allows a goal, and 2 minutes after that, and UPL was playing really well. It was a 0-0 game, if I remember correctly, after one period. A few minutes into the second period, UPL allows a goal, and he had been playing very, very well up until that point. And all of a sudden, a couple minutes later, he allows a second goal. And it's like, it wasn't surprising because UPL seems like the kind of goaltender that really can let things get to him. And it's understandable. I'm not, faulting him for that. There are plenty of people that I feel like will fall under that kind of umbrella of when you feel like there's a lot at you and you hold yourself accountable at high standards, and all of a sudden one thing breaks you down, you kind of let your guard down a little bit, and next thing you know, another thing gets by you, literally in this case a puck. But it is what it is. In that Florida game, Devon Levi doesn't let that backbreaking goal get to him. He continues to just grind away, make sure he keeps his team in it, and they had a chance through the final whistle, when the zeros hit the clock. The Sabres lost 2-1, right? It sucks. It's unfortunate, but Devon Levi, now through 2 NHL starts, is currently sitting at what is still an insane number. Apologize. He is sitting at an insane 942 save percentage through 2 games in his NHL career. And he looks as comfortable as anything I've ever seen when it comes to a young goalie in the NHL, just especially considering the magnitude of these games he has had to start so far. It's incredible. And it brings me kind of to another point that I wanted to discuss here. And is he ready already to be one of the 2 guys on this roster come opening night next season? Before his first NHL start, before that Rangers game, and even a little bit after that, but the question was already kind of brewing in my head, and I'm sure in many's, and honestly, it might have even already been answered to others after that first game. But after that, I was still kind of thinking about it. I was accepting that he was most likely the smart thing to do with him and his development and everything like that, because he is still very young. But have him play an entire year, at least a good chunk of next season in Rochester in the AHL, to develop as a pro and kind of really get a ground and a base and a foundation to his pro career to then build from there when he makes that full-time jump to the NHL. Now, after that Florida game, I am at a true coin flip when it comes to that question and that decision when it comes to him. I am extremely curious to see how he is now following this and through the end of the season. I imagine there's 1 to 2 starts at least that he will be making by season's end. I think his play has played Craig Anderson off of playing unless I feel like the Craig Anderson situation through the end of the season, there's no reason to play him one. I believe he retires after the season anyways, and absolutely deserves it. And I wish all the best for him. If he wants to play a game, if he went up to like Kevin Adams was like, I want one more, like say he wants to play the game against Carolina or, whatever. And he's like, hey, I just want one more go at this. I want my family to be here for my final game. I've called in everyone for this Saturday afternoon game. I want my kids to see me one more time. They, I think at this point he deserves it, I guess, in a way. But if the playoffs are still technically in hand, I don't know if you just hand it to him. So it really, and like say the Carolina game really dictates what happens in Detroit. If you're listening to this tonight on Thursday, but regardless, but overall, there's no real reason to play Craig Anderson unless he wants to desperately play. So you're looking now at Comrie, Levi, of course, and UPL. I feel like the net now should really just go between Devon Levi and UPL. That should be the two tandem going through to the end of the season. And if you really look at it, so the Rangers game and the Devils game coming up are back to back. Then you have a Senators, home season finale, and at Columbus back to back. You realistically then are getting one of each there. And then how they treat Thursday and Saturday, I have no idea. Honestly, I could see Devon Levi starting against Detroit. It's just kind of a hunch I have. I think he deserves to get another nod here after that Florida performance, but we will see. And I will understand, I guess, if they want to go to UPL just because Granato's kind of been flipping through the Rolodex of goaltenders all season. But I'm very, very curious to come back to it to see how he finishes out the season and the performances. If he can maintain a level of play that he has shown through these 2 games and say his save percentage finishes up above a 930, and especially if you add to that keeping the goals against average at 2 or less. Technically, it's at a 198 if you look at stats. Realistically, it's 2 goals against. He's had 2 goals against both games, but it's a 198 statistically, so it's under 2 factually right now. If he can maintain that pace, like I said, I'm at a coin flip right now if he should go to the AHL or if he should be on this team. If he maintains this through the end of the season and shows he is a dog through it all, and he is above a 930 save percentage, especially that's the one number I'm really going to keep a close eye on. Yeah, he has to be one of the 2 guys next season. You have to throw out the idea that I think Kevin Adams even had, where it was like, we're going to have this guy play a full season in the AHL next year, and we'll figure out goaltending again. Hopefully, it doesn't waste a season of this squad because I believe playoffs are going to be the goal next season. But you have to throw out that idea if he maintains this level of play all the way through the end of the year. I mean, he looks as comfortable a rookie goaltender can look as I can recall. It's unbelievable. And with that said, the final point I kind of want to go into this is if Devon Levi is one of your 2 goaltenders to start next season, what do you do? Now, as I said, Anderson's going to be retired, but what do you do with UPL and or Comrie? The answer to me, plain and simply, is that you move at least one of the 2 of them. And I say that because if I were Kevin Adams, now I'm not, and I don't know what his plan is and everything like that. I am a fan. I am just someone that has watched hockey all his life and things like that. But at a fan's level, I am not a GM of a team. I am not the GM of the Sabres. I am not Kevin Adams. But if I was Kevin Adams in this scenario, and I am like, okay, Devon Levi is going to be on the Sabres come opening night of the 23-24 season, I am moving both UPL and Comrie because I am still, if possible, because I am still actively going out there and trying to find a legitimate number 1. And what I mean by that is a guy who has shown he can be a number one goaltender and put in number one goaltending games played and efforts at this level. And the guy that comes to mind for, again, and I've mentioned his name before, I will mention his name because, I listen to other podcasts. I listen to other educated people in the NHL and stuff. I'm a fan again, once more, one more time for the people in the back here. I am a fan just like the rest of you. And Thatcher Demko's name keeps coming up. And I like Thatcher Demko a lot too. If you are given the opportunity, and if, in this scenario, I am Kevin Adams, right? I am the GM of the Sabres. And you call Vancouver and you go, Vancouver, we will take Thatcher Demko and his $5.5 million a year contract, or it's around $5 million, I believe, year contract for the next 3 seasons, I believe it is. We will take that off your hands, and we will send you UPL, and then whatever else is needed from either our side to make that trade happen. And Vancouver agrees to it. You sign that dotted line as fast as you can. You get Thatcher Demko in here as your 1 and Devon Levi as your 2. And number ones don't play 60 games a season anymore. They don't play 58 games a season. Like, you will have Devon Levi starting 30 games next season. Like, I would absolutely see that. Like, I could see a world, like, if we have a true number one like a Thatcher Demko, and then you have Devon Levi backing him up, quote unquote, there is a real possibility that it'd be like Thatcher Demko 52 starts, Devon Levi 30 starts. Like, it's you are going to, one, ride the hot hand in moments, especially if one guy's really picking up elevating his game and really playing well. And 2, rest. Rest is huge for these guys. Like, they don't they don't get leaned on like workhorses, like as if, back when Miller was playing 60 plus games and Brodeur was playing 60 plus, like, that doesn't happen anymore. That doesn't happen in the modern NHL. So get a Thatcher Demko. You're not stunting the development of Devon Levi by any stretch of the imagination. And if anything, you are going to help him really learn how to be a true number one with a legit guy there next to him. And I think the benefit of that is massive. And now you also have 2 legitimate goaltending options that you can lean on and trust in games for the rest of this roster. And they realize that they are expected to make the playoffs and be a legitimate team in this league moving forward if those 2 guys are sitting there. And I say that because if you trade at UPL, which I would imagine would have to happen in the world, that you're trading for a Demko, but you move UPL and you get a Demko, you're also moving Comrie, whether it's releasing him or, putting him on waivers to bring him, send him down to the AHL and see what happens there, or trading it, moving him via trade. Like, you are doing something. Eric Comrie's not going to be on this roster, and you are going for Demko and Levi. And I think that world is something that Kevin Adams should definitely explore. And Devon Levi's play has been unbelievable. I am going to forever call him Master Levi. I think it's incredible. And Master Levi is he's a dude. He's a dog. He is he is him. He looks to be him. And I am so excited for Devon Levi, Master Levi, to be hopefully the franchise cornerstone in net, something that this team and this organization and us as fans have desperately wanted since we traded Ryan Miller to the Blues and that era officially ended. And it's fitting in a weird way that Devon Levi makes his starts in the season of which Ryan Miller's number was hung in the rafters and retired. Do we have another absolute stud and stallion franchise goaltender? I believe, man, this guy is something else. So I would love to hear what you have to say about it. Tweet at me if you're listening to this at Sabres Chat Pod. If you're watching this, leave a comment in the YouTube, stuff like that. I love everything about it. Kind of to wrap things up here, there are 4 games. It's a very compact schedule, for the Sabres to end the season. There's 4 games between now and my next episode. There's 2 games that follow after that, and that is the end of this regular season. If you're listening to this on Thursday, they play tonight at Detroit. Then they have a matinee game, the lovely matinee home games, Saturday against the Hurricanes. Then turn and go to Manhattan to play at the New York Rangers on Monday night and have to kind of drive over to New Jersey to go and play the New Jersey Devils on Tuesday night. 4 games there. Really, the objective for this team and what I want to see out of it is simply to continue to finish the season strong. I want this team to play at a high level and just make sure they don't, with the realization of playoffs not being possible anymore, unfortunately, and all of that kind of reduce their game a little bit. I want to see them finish strong. I continue to do something. The big thing to me and something that I found was very interesting is this team currently still has a good chance to finish and hit the 40 win mark on the season. And what's crazy to me is if this team finishes with 40 or more wins on this season, since the 2000-2001 season, that would be only the 7th time. That is 22 seasons. It's not 23 because there was that one full lockout year, but that would be technically there was a lockout shortened season in there as well. So unfortunately, that one, wasn't able to hit. But regardless, that would be only the 7th season in 22 seasons that this team hit the 40 win mark. It would actually be only the 2nd time in those 7 as well that they didn't make the postseason if they hit the 40 win mark and inevitably not make the postseason. Only one other time since 2000, 2001 has that happened. But that is something right there that this team could kind of hang their head high on and look at as a benchmark, right? And look at during all the offseason and when they try to continue to, make the next step forward and finish the job next season, hopefully by making the playoffs. What they can look at during the offseason is we hit 40 wins and we didn't make the playoffs. This team hit 40 wins and played very well, and it still wasn't good enough to make the playoffs, but we know we're that good. We know we're capable of getting 40 wins and putting 40 wins together. It's an 82 game season, and you won 40 games. That is a great feat. In hockey terms, you finished above 500. It might not actually because overtime losses plus your regulation losses might equate to be more than your wins. But in hockey terms, those overtime losses, of course, you get points. So let's not count those towards, 500, quote unquote, look. And you finished above 500 and you hit that 40 win mark. That is big. And in the context of this organization and the context of this team, that is something that doesn't happen too often as of late. And of course, hasn't happened in a very long time. So that is what you can hang your cap on. That is something this team should, feel good about themselves with and hold their heads high and really be able to look back and reflect on during the offseason as they continue to build towards getting this team back into the playoffs and ultimately being competitive, being legitimate. And now with Levi, as we've discussed this episode, and you have already Tage Thompson and Dylan Cousins and Alex Tuck and Rasmus Dahlin and Matthias Samuelsson and Owen Power and all these pieces, letting all the pieces of the puzzle come together, let everything build simultaneously and hopefully bring us something that seemed unimaginable not even 2 seasons ago. It's exciting. Hopefully they're able to finish the season strong. They have those next 4 games coming up between now and the next episode. I'm excited to still watch this season through. I'm excited for this team and hopefully they're able to finish strong. Thank you again for stopping by and listening. I say it every week and I'm going to continue to say it. I appreciate everyone that listens and or watches on YouTube. Be sure to like this video if you enjoy this and everything like that. It goes a long way. Leave a comment, any of your feelings, hot takes, cold takes, anything you hate about I do. My, little Dicky Brain shirt I'm wearing if you're watching on YouTube. Dave premieres tonight as I'm recording on Wednesday night. Actually, I believe it already premiered. I need to watch that. But, Brain, explicitive, don't know about Pangea. Love this shirt. Anyways, leave a comment, anything about that. Subscribe to Built in Buffalo's YouTube channel. Don't miss out on any of these episodes that come out every week, Thursdays at noon, and all the other great content that Built in Buffalo puts out, including my other show with my co-host Josh, Bills Chat Live every Friday evening at 8:00. And also our podcast, Bills Chat Podcast, on Monday mornings. We drop anywhere you listen to all of your podcasts and also drop on YouTube later on Mondays. Um, it's an absolute pleasure. I appreciate you stopping by. It's a great time here. And until next week, you guys have a great time. I am Luka. This is Sabres Chat presented by Built in Buffalo. Have a great rest of your day.